Hey, my name is Liam. I'm 26. Until 3 months ago, I was just a paramedic trying to make it through night shifts in a city that never sleeps. Then I got slammed into a railing on a call, ended up on a gurney, and my boss stood over me, gloved hands cleaning my shoulder, and said, "You're single, right? Then give me your number." I joked back, "So this is a date?" And she actually blushed. I didn't know she was 43, married to a hospital board member, or that her late-night texts would become the most dangerous thing I've ever done. 6 months later, she looked at me in a dark parking lot and whispered, "Some stories don't get endings. They just get quieter. If you're watching this right now, tell me where you're from in the comments. Because I still don't know if what we did was wrong. I thought she was just doing a routine welfare check." That's what I told myself when Officer Ward stood over me in the ambulance bay that night, her gloved hands cleaning the gash on my shoulder. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Everything smelled like antiseptic and blood. My shirt was torn where I'd been slammed against a railing during the call. Some drunk guy who didn't want help, didn't want me touching him. I was 26. She was my boss. I knew her name, knew she ran the paramedic crews from that office upstairs with the big window. But we'd never really talked. Just the usual Carter and ma'am when our paths crossed. She had this perfume, warm and woody. It cut through the hospital smell. Her voice was steady, clinical. "You're lucky it's not deeper. But you live alone, right?" I nodded, trying not to wince. "Anyone to drive you home?" "I'll manage." She looked at me for a second longer than necessary. Then she said, "You're single, right? Then give me your number, in case we need to check on you for documentation." I tried to joke through the pain. "So this is a date?" The words were out before I could stop them. My face went hot. She was my supervisor. But she blushed. Just for a second. This tiny crack in her professional mask. "Documentation, Carter," she said, but her voice was softer. I gave her my number. In the background, Marco, my partner, was laughing about something with one of the nurses. Jen, the ER nurse who liked to gossip, rolled her eyes at me. Chief Daniels, our station chief, walked past with his usual scowl, checking the incident form. Later, after they'd cleared me and I was sitting alone in the back of the ambulance, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Officer Ward, just making sure you got home okay when you do. Report says bruised, not invincible." I stared at that message for a long time before I saved her contact. I got home around 3 in the morning. My apartment was quiet. Too quiet. The mess I'd left that morning was still there. Dishes in the sink, uniform on the floor. I peeled off what was left of my shirt. The bruise was already dark, purple. I could still smell antiseptic on my skin. I kept thinking about what I'd said. "So this is a date?" Jesus, I'd actually said that to my boss, but she'd texted me from a personal number. I made myself respond, "Home in one piece, ma'am. Shoulders fine, ego slightly bruised." 3 dots appeared almost immediately. Then, "Ego will heal faster. Get some rest." I smiled at my phone like an idiot. We exchanged a few more messages. Just small talk about the call, about how crazy the night had been. Professional. But there was something underneath it. Something that made me read each message twice. Marco called me around 4. "Dude, Officer Ward has a soft spot for rookies. Don't get a big head." "She was just checking the injury." "Sure," he laughed. "That's why she personally cleaned your shoulder instead of letting Jen do it." After we hung up, I microwaved some leftovers and sat on my couch. My phone was in my hand. I scrolled through social media, saw pictures of friends at bars, friends with their girlfriends, A guy from my training class who just got engaged. My apartment felt smaller. I went to bed at dawn with my phone on my chest. I typed out, "Thanks again for looking out for me tonight," then deleted it. Finally sent, "Thanks for the check-in." The read receipt popped up immediately. She was still awake, still at the station. I woke up the next afternoon around 2. The daylight felt wrong. That's the thing about night shifts. You sleep through the world. In the shower, I saw the wound in the mirror. I remembered her fingers, careful and precise, the snap of latex gloves, her perfume mixing with antiseptic, calibrated narrative tone and mapped story progression toward intimate reveal. Good start. I'm capturing the tone well. Short sentences, past tense, sensory details. Need to continue through the key beats while maintaining the 44,000 word target for part 1. Let me continue with the husband reveal and building intimacy. That evening, I was back at the station for my next shift. Marco handed me terrible coffee from the machine. It tasted burned, bitter. We'd been drinking it for so long we didn't even notice anymore. Chief Daniels cornered us during roll call, reminding everyone about incident reports and professional boundaries. Some issue with another crew. He had this way of looking at you that made you feel guilty, even when you'd done nothing wrong. I saw Elena, Officer Ward, in the hallway. She was in full professional mode. Crisp uniform, ring on her finger, catching the light. We exchanged a "Carter" and "ma'am," but our eyes held for just a fraction too long. In the break room, Marco and Jen were talking about hospital politics, budget cuts, board meetings. "You know Officer Ward's married to one of the board members, right?" Jen said, pouring more bad coffee. My stomach dropped. "Dr. Thomas Ward," Marco added. "Big shot cardiologist, loaded. That guy basically controls half our funding." I tried to keep my face neutral, took a sip of coffee, swallowed wrong and coughed. She wasn't just married. She was married to someone who had power over all of us, someone who could end careers with a phone call. That night, we ran a call to an elderly woman who'd fallen. Nothing dramatic, just scared and confused. I was gentle with her, talking her through everything. Marco handled the logistics. Elena's voice came over the radio, checking in, asking for updates. After we dropped off the patient, I stood in the ambulance bay, looked up at her office window. The light was on. I could see her silhouette, phone pressed to her ear, that ring flashing as she gestured. My phone buzzed. "How's the shoulder holding up tonight?" I stared between the window and the screen, felt something shift in my chest, something dangerous. Later that same night, she texted me to come by her office between calls. "Review documentation," she said. Marco raised an eyebrow but didn't comment. I climbed the stairs. Each step echoed. The fluorescent lights hummed louder in the empty hallway. Her office was warm compared to the rest of the station. A desk lamp instead of overhead lights, stacked clipboards, the distant wail of sirens beneath everything. She started professional. Incident details, safety procedures. Was I having any symptoms? Then she explained that having my number was useful for wellness follow-ups, off-duty check-ins when paperwork lagged behind. Her voice was steady, but her body language said she actually cared. "Where do you live?" she asked. "Small apartment, East Side, still paying off student loans." She nodded. "I'm on the other side of the river, suburbs." She said it flatly, like the location didn't matter. "Big house I'm rarely in when it's light outside." Her phone lit up. Thomas on the screen. She silenced it without answering. "Dinner I'm missing," she said, her voice going flat. We kept talking. Little things, her early career, my lack of family support, the silence both of us lived in. When I left, she stopped me at the door. "If the shoulder worsens, text me. Don't be stubborn." She handed me my report. Our fingers brushed. I felt the rough texture of my jacket under her hand as she steadied herself. That perfume again. Warm and woody, lingering even after I walked away. Down in the bay, Marco grinned. "Private audience with the officer? Should I salute you now?" I laughed, but my heart was racing. A few hours later, around 2 in the morning, dispatch sent us to a panic attack call in a luxury building. High-rise, doorman, marble lobby. Elena decided to ride along. "Evaluating response protocols," she said officially. But I felt her eyes on me in the elevator. We stood inches apart. The smell of antiseptic from my kit. Her perfume. The ding of each floor. The patient was a woman in her 40s, hyperventilating. Terrified. I sat on the floor with her. Talked her through breathing. Calm and steady. Elena watched from the doorway. When I glanced up, her expression had softened. After we'd stabilized her and called for a hospital transport, the three of us rode down in silence. Marco cracked a joke to cut the tension. But something unspoken was building between me and Elena. Back at the bay, she thanked me specifically. "Patients trust you fast. That matters." Her hand landed on my arm, just for a second, but it was a second too long. Later, sitting in my car at dawn, too tired to drive, my phone buzzed. "Could have gone sideways tonight. You did good, Carter. Get some sleep." I fell asleep that morning with that message still open on my screen. The next day was my scheduled off day. I woke at noon to my quiet apartment pressing in around me. Checked my phone out of habit. She texted around 1. Something neutral about delayed symptoms from the injury. But then we just kept talking. Bad station coffee. Favorite takeout. How the sirens still played in our heads when we tried to sleep. She sent a picture of her untouched cafeteria lunch. I sent back my microwave meal. We joked about the different kinds of exhaustion night shifts caused. I went to the grocery store later, saw an old school friend with his girlfriend and their baby. They looked happy. Complete. I felt the weight of my solitude more than usual. Thought about texting a woman I used to see casually. Didn't. That night my phone buzzed again. Elena from her upscale kitchen texting while her husband talked loudly on a work call in another room. I didn't know those details then, but I could feel the loneliness in her messages. "You make the nights feel shorter. Don't get used to your days off." I smiled and went to bed early, phone on my nightstand, feeling like a teenager with a crush. 2 days later, 2 days of sporadic texts about work and small personal details, I was back for another night shift. Chief Daniels opened roll call with a reminder about professionalism. "No blurring lines with supervisors," he said. It was about some unrelated issue, but I felt Elena's presence across the room like a weight. We ran regular calls that night. Asthma attack, bar fight, elderly patient with chest pain. Nothing dramatic, just work. Around 2 in the morning, my phone buzzed. "Decompress with a coffee before you go home?" She specified the back lot, away from cameras. My nerves kicked in as I walked out into the rain-speckled parking lot. The smell of wet asphalt. Sirens faint in the distance. Her car was in the far corner, 2 coffees steaming in the cup holders. I got in the passenger seat. The rain pattered softly on the roof. We talked half about work, half about life. She mentioned living in a tiny apartment before Thomas. Before the big house. Before the cold, beautiful life. I told her I hadn't taken a real vacation in years. Couldn't afford it. We didn't touch beyond sitting close. But our body language. We were angled toward each other. Laughing softly. The windows fogged slightly from our breath. It felt like a cocoon. Safe. Dangerous. When I finally got out to go home, an ambulance pulled into the lot. Marco was driving. He saw me closing her passenger door. Our eyes met. He raised an eyebrow but didn't say anything. Not yet. I drove home with a fizzy, reckless feeling in my chest. The next night at the station, Jen cornered me in the break room. "You and Officer Ward seem pretty chummy lately." I deflected, changed the subject, but the seed was planted. Marco asked later if I was gunning for a promotion, giving me a knowing look. During the shift, Elena and I crossed paths in the hallways. A shared laugh over a ridiculous call. Brief eye contact that lasted too long. Everything technically professional. But the tension was thick enough to choke on. Late in the night, she texted, "Can you stay after shift? Need to go over your last incident form off record." It sounded like work. It felt like something else. I debated. Knew this was beyond normal. Went anyway. The station was quiet. Overhead lights buzzing louder in the emptiness. My boots echoed on the stairs. I reached her office door. She was waiting, standing by her desk. When I walked in, she closed the door behind me. The soft click was deliberate, audible. I saw the ring on her finger, saw the blank security camera down the hall through the window, and I knew we'd crossed into something we couldn't take back. We stood in that office, door closed, fluorescent hum filling the silence. She had a file with my name on her desk, but didn't open it. "The call where you got injured," she said quietly. "It reminded me of someone." I waited. "A rookie I lost, years ago. Car crash en route to a scene. I was supervising that night too. I couldn't—" She stopped, twisted her wedding ring unconsciously. Then she took it off and set it on the desk, rubbing the indentation on her finger. She'd removed her ring in front of me. "I didn't ask for your number just for reports," she admitted. "I wanted someone to talk to. Someone who isn't on the hospital board with my husband." Her voice cracked. Her eyes went damp. The mask was off. I moved closer without thinking. Wanted to comfort her. Knew I shouldn't. She stood too, stepped forward. And then, she rested her forehead against mine. Just for a few seconds. No kiss, just shared breath, eyes closed, the warmth of her skin, the faint scent of her perfume mixing with antiseptic from my uniform. We pulled apart. Reality crashed back. She slipped the ring on quickly, voice going professional again. "You should get some sleep, Carter." I left her office, shaking. Touched my forehead where hers had been. Nothing was the same now. Over the next week, we didn't talk about that moment, but everything changed. We texted more. 2, 3 in the morning. Coffees in the back lot became a routine. Brief check-ins in hallways that felt intimate, even when they looked innocent. A rough call left me shaken one night. A combative drunk who'd swung at me, missed, hit Marco instead. Afterward, Elena sent, "Proud of how you handled that. Not everyone could." Marco started commenting that I seemed distracted but weirdly happy. Jen teased about a secret girlfriend when she caught me smiling at my phone. At home, Elena texted from her pantry while Thomas was on a conference call in another room. During charity events, from her car in the driveway, not wanting to go inside. I saw her looking at her phone more than at her husband. After a particularly rough night, a failed resuscitation, a kid we couldn't save, we met in her car again. Rain on the windshield, silence between us. "You make this job bearable," she said finally. "You're going to spoil me for any normal boss," I half joked. She looked at me for a long moment. "Good." A few days later, we got assigned to a high-risk call together. Teenage girl, car crash. Elena rode with me and Marco. Sirens, broken glass, the smell of antiseptic mixing with gasoline. The girl's parents were screaming, but I stayed steady. Elena coordinated. Marco assisted. We stabilized her, got her to the hospital. In the back of the ambulance afterward, Elena's hands shook slightly. "Kids' calls always get under my skin," she said. I reached out, covered her gloved hand with mine. She stepped closer. And again there was that forehead touch. More intentional this time. A silent thank you. A recognition of shared trauma. "You have no idea how much lighter it feels when you're on my crew," she whispered. Marco called us in before I could respond. The spell broke. That same morning, exhausted from the shift, we stood in the break room. Terrible coffee in chipped mugs. Chief Daniels praised our performance on the crash call. After everyone left, Elena said casually, "One of these days we should grab a coffee that isn't from this machine." It hung in the air like a question, like a test. Over the next several days, we kept our car routine, kept texting. We sent each other photos of cute cafes we passed. The real coffee idea became a shared fantasy. Marco invited me out with friends. I declined, said I was tired. "You're saving energy for someone else," he said, giving me a look. At home, Elena tried to suggest a simple date to Thomas. He brushed her off. Board meeting. Important call. She sat in her expensive kitchen, alone, and texted me a photo of a cafe across town. "No one from the station goes here." Then, "Shift ends at 7, if you're up for better coffee." My heart pounded. This was different from the parking lot. This was deliberate, public, risky. We both worked the same shift the next night, moved through calls like automatons, both of us thinking about 7 in the morning. When shift ended, we drove separately to the cafe. I got there early, anxious. The place smelled like real coffee instead of sanitizer. Warm, lighting. People in work clothes, oblivious. Elena walked in dressed differently. Hair down, jacket over her uniform, looking less like my boss, more like a woman. We sat in a corner booth, started talking about work. Then it shifted. Her early career, my childhood, her big empty house, my small empty apartment, the different kinds of loneliness. She laughed at something I said. Her hand touched my wrist. And Marco walked in with his girlfriend. He froze, just for a second. Saw us in that booth. Saw how comfortable we looked, how not work this was. He recovered, nodded at me, pretended not to see us. But his girlfriend asked, "Coworker?" "Yeah," Marco said, his voice flat. "Small world." His eyes said everything. Elena's face drained of color. We both straightened, tried to look formal. As we left separately, she said quietly, "We should pretend this was just a one-time debrief." I agreed, but we both knew the truth. That afternoon, back at the station for my next shift, Jen smirked and asked me how the coffee in Kensington was. Word was already spreading. Over the next 3 days, 3 consecutive shifts, the tension rose like water behind a dam. Day 1. Jen made comments about off-duty hangouts. Marco watched me closely during calls, serious now. Chief Daniels mentioned rumors of staff getting cozy with supervisors, said the board was sensitive about appearances. Day 2. Elena kept her distance, addressed me formally in front of others. Her texts slowed, became purely professional. I felt the coldness like withdrawal. Day 3. I saw her in a glass conference room with Chief Daniels and an HR rep. Couldn't hear them. But their faces were serious. My performance started slipping. On a call, I nearly grabbed the wrong medication. Marco caught it, stopped me with a firm hand on my wrist. Afterward, in the ambulance, he said, "Whatever is going on, don't let it follow you onto the rig." At home, Elena sat in her car in the driveway, not wanting to go inside. Thomas was more concerned about his board presentation than his wife. She looked at my name on her phone. chose not to text. One night I tried to catch her alone in her office. She kept the door half open. Didn't sit. For your sake, we need to cool down the extra conversations. Her voice broke slightly. It's not about you, it's about everything around you. I left feeling rejected and confused and angry. The next shift, I was running on no sleep, replaying her words, phone silent. We got a cardiac call. Cramped apartment, high stress. I was distracted, almost administered the wrong dose. Marco's hand shot out, gripping my wrist. Not that one. We corrected it. The patient was fine. But the scare was real. In the ambulance, Marco confronted me. You're acting like someone going through a breakup he never had. He didn't say her name, but he knew. I felt the guilt crash over me, over the near mistake, over how much she'd gotten into, my head. Jen mentioned hearing about a vague complaint about a supervisor crossing lines. Didn't know details. But my anxiety spiked. Back at my locker, I found a printed memo. Professional boundaries, social media conduct, posted by Chief Daniels, generic. But the timing felt like a target on my back. 3 days later, 3 days of Elena barely speaking to me outside radio calls, I saw her in a conference room with Thomas and Chief Daniels. I only heard fragments. Complaint. Optics. Reassignment. Elena looked exhausted. Thomas looked irritated. Daniels looked rigid. Later, I delivered paperwork to Daniels' office. He stepped out. I saw a folder with my name. Couldn't help glancing at it. Transfer order. To another station across town. At the bottom, Elena's signature, already there. When Daniels returned, he formally told me about the opportunity. Routine staffing, he said. I stayed quiet, but inside I was gutted. That night, alone in my apartment, I stared at the transfer document, typed a message to Elena. Did you sign this? Did I do something wrong? Deleted it, packed my locker in my mind, realized my time near her was over, and I had no idea if she'd saved me or abandoned me. 2 weeks later, I started my first night at the new station across town. The building was older. Different smells, more motor oil, less antiseptic. Different faces in the locker room, different rhythm to everything. I met my new partner, a guy named Davis who asked where I'd transferred from. I gave minimal answers, avoided names. He joked about the fancy district I came from, pointing out the class difference like it was nothing. I did my job well, stayed polite but distant, didn't let anyone in. At 2 a.m, out of habit, I'd check my phone. But there was nothing beyond one formal email from Elena acknowledging the transfer. Praising my work, signed Officer E. Ward. After my shift, I drove home the long way, past the old hospital. I parked across from the station and looked up at her office window. The light was on. I didn't text, just watched for a minute. Then drove away. The ache was worse than I expected. A few days later, I transferred a patient to the main hospital and ran into Jen in the ER. We caught up briefly. Small talk. Then she mentioned, almost casually, there was some complaint about a supervisor getting too close to staff. Officer Ward handled it before it became a thing. Recommended some transfers proactively. My stomach twisted. She defended that rookie. You, like hell, Jen added. Daniels wanted to make it formal. She shut it down. Said you'd done nothing wrong, that the rumor was just gossip. Jen didn't know the intimate details, but she made it clear. Elena had protected me, taken the heat, sacrificed to keep me safe. Thomas wasn't thrilled about any hint of scandal, Jen said, even unproven. You know how board members are. After she left, I sat in my rig for a long time, rethinking everything. The transfer wasn't abandonment. It was a shield. That night, I scrolled through my old messages with Elena. I'd saved them all. read them over and over like a pathetic teenager. I recorded a voice message. "I'm sorry I made things harder for you." Then deleted it before sending. Set my phone face down, decided not to reach out. If she'd sacrificed to protect me, the least I could do was stay away. Over the next week, I fell into a pattern. Work, sleep, empty evenings. I performed well on a difficult call, a drowning victim we actually revived, and I heard Elena's voice in my head. Patients trust you fast. I avoided personal conversations with my new co-workers, afraid of repeating old mistakes. At night, I'd lie awake, staring at my phone, thumb hovering over her name in my contacts. I saw her name on system emails sometimes, just her name copied on hospital-wide messages. It was enough to make my chest hurt. I drafted messages constantly. "Do you hate me? Thank you for what you did. I miss our talks." Deleted them all. Told myself staying silent was protecting her. One night after shift, I stood outside my building listening to distant sirens. Thought about how Elena might be in one of those rigs. Thought about texting her. Didn't. And then everything changed with one call. It was my third night off in a row. I'd been trying not to think about her. Failing, but trying. Dispatch sent us to a chest pain, possible cardiac, in a high-end suburb. We drove through quiet, wealthy streets, large houses, perfect lawns. As we pulled up to the address, something about the stone facade felt familiar. Then I saw her. Elena stood in the doorway in an oversized sweater, barefoot, panicked. Behind her on the stairs sat a man. Pale, sweating, hand on his chest. Dr. Thomas Ward, her husband. My professional training kicked in immediately. I grabbed my kit and walked inside like I'd never met her before. "Sir, I'm going to need you to stay calm. Can you describe the pain?" Thomas was coherent. Described classic cardiac symptoms. I took vitals, administered aspirin, prepped him for transport. All textbook. Elena helped by handing me equipment. Our fingers brushed when she passed me the BP cuff. She whispered my name. Liam. So quietly I almost didn't hear it. I didn't look at her directly. Couldn't. We loaded Thomas into the ambulance. Elena rode up front with Davis while I worked in the back, monitoring her husband's heart rate, keeping him stable. At the hospital, Thomas was admitted. Tests, monitoring. He'd be fine. Probably stress and poor diet, not a full cardiac event. Elena thanked us formally, barely looked at me in the bright ER lights. I turned to leave. But our eyes met once. Just once. Everything we couldn't say hung in that look. I finished paperwork back at the station. Adrenaline slowly fading. Couldn't stop replaying the image of her in that doorway. On my way home at dawn, I drove past her house again. The ambulance was gone, street quiet. As I drove by slowly, the porch light flickered. Off, then on, then off again. A deliberate signal. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. A photo of a hospital parking lot at night. Text. Unit 4 still awake? Our old routine line. My hands shook. I pulled over, read it twice. She was using a different phone, covering her tracks. I typed, always. Then, is he okay? Her response came quickly. Stable. We need to talk somewhere quiet. I stared at the message. Knew what she was asking. Knew the risk. The next evening, 24 hours later, I worked my shift on autopilot, moved through calls, did my job. But my mind was elsewhere. During a lull, I reread her messages. She'd suggested the old back lot. Same place. No cameras in the far corner, no uniforms. Just talk. My new partner joked about me having someone waiting. I laughed it off. After shift, I went home, showered, changed into civilian clothes, sat on my couch debating. I heard Chief Daniel's warnings in my head, imagined what would happen if anyone saw us, but I also imagined never seeing her again. That emptiness. I picked up my keys, whispered to my empty apartment, "Just talk," walked out. The rain started as I drove towards the old station. Same sound that had followed our whole story. Tap, tap, tap on the windshield. The backlot was dark, familiar, the far corner where cameras didn't reach, the hum of distant sirens. Elena's car was already there, engine off, interior lights glowing softly. She was in casual clothes, hair pulled back, no ring visible. 2 takeaway coffees sat on the dashboard. I got in the passenger seat. The rain picked up, cocooning us. "Thomas is fine," she said immediately. "Minor blockage. Stress. They're monitoring him for a few days." "Good." Silence. Then she turned to me. "The complaint was real. Marco didn't file it, but someone on another crew saw us at that cafe. Put 2 and 2 together. Chief Daniels called me in. Said the board, Thomas, needed reassurance there was nothing happening." "So you transferred me." "I protected you," she corrected. "Daniels wanted to suspend you, launch an investigation, blame the younger guy, the subordinate. I said I'd recommended the transfer for your career development, that any rumors were just gossip from envious coworkers. I nearly lost my job convincing him." I felt the weight of that. "You should have just let me get suspended." "No." Her voice was firm. "You didn't do anything wrong." "Neither did you." She laughed bitterly. "I'm the married one. I'm the boss. I'm the one who started texting you after hours. I'm the one who made a stupid joke about a date." We both smiled at that. Brief. Sad. "I missed the texts," I admitted. "Me too." More silence. Rain on the roof. Our breath fogging the windows slightly. "We can't keep doing what we were doing," she said finally. "No daily texts, no secret cafe dates, no crossing into anything physical." I nodded. "I know. But I also can't pretend you don't exist. So what do we do?" She looked at me. "I don't know. Something quieter. Something that doesn't end both our careers." We sat there sipping coffee. At one point, our hands rested on the console, close enough that our fingers just barely touched, then separated. "Some stories don't get endings," she said softly. "They just get quieter." I understood what she meant. This was goodbye, and also not quite goodbye. Over the next few months, we settled into something that looked from the outside like nothing at all. I worked at my new station, got better at my job, started laughing occasionally with Davis and the other guys, felt steadier. I'd see Elena at hospital-wide meetings sometimes, across crowded rooms. We'd nod politely. Nothing more. But once every few weeks, sometimes 3 weeks, sometimes 4, we'd meet. Same back lot or a different distant parking spot. Never the same place twice in a row. Never during a shift. Always late at night when the world was sleeping. We'd talk, just talk, about patients, podcasts, the weather, life. No touching beyond maybe a brief shoulder bump when one of us laughed. No "I love you." No talk of divorce or running away or any kind of future. We both understood the cost. We both chose this version. Limited, careful, sustainable. Early on, after one particularly hard shift where I'd lost a patient, we met, and I broke down a little. She hugged me. Just once. A long, tight hug, where I smelled that warm, woody perfume and felt her heartbeat, and knew this was probably the last time we'd touch like this. After that, we kept it even safer. Hands, shoulders, nothing more. The sensory details stayed the same, the sirens fading in the distance, the smell of antiseptic lingering on our clothes even off duty, the burnt station coffee we'd complain about, rain on car roofs more often than not. She'd send me a harmless meme about night shifts at 2 in the morning. I'd reply with something equally light. Once, she sent me a photo of takeout from a place I'd mentioned months ago. Tried your recommendation. You were right. I sent back, "See? I know things." Her reply, "Never doubted that." It felt like friendship. It felt like more. It felt like the only version of this that could survive. I dated someone briefly. A nurse from my new station. Lasted 6 weeks. She was nice. Pretty. Age-appropriate. But when she'd text me at 2 in the morning, it felt wrong. When she suggested moving in together, I panicked and ended it. Davis asked if I was still hung up on someone. I said no. He didn't believe me. Elena stayed with Thomas. I knew this because I saw her at a hospital charity event once. She didn't see me, standing next to him in an expensive dress, his hand on her lower back, her smile perfect and empty. She texted me later that night. "Survived another gala. How was your shift?" I replied. "Saved 2 lives, lost 1, usual." Her, "The ones we save matter more." Me, "That what you tell yourself?" Her, "Every single day." One night, about 8 months after the transfer, we met in our usual spot. I got there first. She pulled in a few minutes later. 2 coffees. Always 2 coffees. "How's Thomas?" I asked. I usually didn't. "The same. Busy. Important. Doesn't ask how I'm doing." "How are you doing?" She looked at me. "Better when you ask." We sat in comfortable silence. The rain had stopped for once. Just the distant hum of the highway. The occasional siren. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked quietly. "What part?" "All of it. The texts, the coffees, telling that stupid joke in the ambulance bay." I thought about it. Honest. "No, you made the worst year of my life bearable. How could I regret that?" She smiled. Sad but real. Me neither. We never called it anything. Never defined it. Never crossed the physical line we'd set in that first parking lot conversation. But some nights, when my shift ends and I'm driving home through empty streets, my phone lights up at 2 in the morning. A photo of terrible station coffee. A complaint about paperwork. A joke about how sirens still play in our heads when we try to sleep. And I know she's awake too, in her big empty house or her office or her car in some parking lot, thinking about the same things I am. We're careful now. Smarter. We know the stakes. Marco asked me once, about a year after the transfer, if I'd ever figured out what I wanted. I said, "Yeah, I just can't have it." He nodded. Didn't push. Last week I ran into Jen again. She mentioned Elena got a promotion. Director of Paramedic Services, more responsibility, more pressure. I was proud of her. Texted her congratulations. She replied, "Couldn't have survived this job without good people around me." I knew she meant me, among others, but me. Some stories don't end. They just continue in quieter ways. I still work night shifts. Still drink terrible coffee. Still hear sirens in my sleep. And once every few weeks, I meet a woman in a dark parking lot. We drink better coffee. Talk about everything and nothing. Keep a careful distance. She still wears her ring. I still don't ask her to take it off. We never crossed the line we talked about in the dark. But when my phone lights up at 2 in the morning, it still feels like the most important notification I'll get all day. I'll probably never call it what it is. Neither will she. Maybe that's the only way this kind of story survives. In the quiet spaces, the late-night texts, the careful coffee dates that look like nothing to everyone else. We never called it anything, never crossed the line we talked about in the dark. But some nights, when the sirens fade and my phone lights up at 2 a.m., it still feels like the one. Story I'll never be brave or stupid enough to finish. Because finishing it means choosing, and choosing means someone gets hurt. So we exist in this in-between place. This quiet routine that's just enough to make us feel alive without destroying everything around us. Is it enough? I don't know. Is it more than nothing? Yeah, it is. And sometimes, when I'm driving past her neighborhood and I see that porch light flicker, off, on, off, I know she's thinking about me too. That's enough. It has to be. If the porch light blinked for you, would you answer?